Okay, so I'm not really sure how to kick off my first video, so let's just jump right in. Here are 5 things I learned while working with Splunk. Number 1, knowledge is definitely power. That's right, kids. NBC was not wrong. Knowledge is most certainly power, and with Splunk, you can log everything. Literally everything. With this superpower to do so, it means that you can create reports, charts, dashboards, all using the data that you put into it. A tool that can parse out data and give you the ability to apply math to see trends in your systems over a period of time is extremely beneficial. By doing so, you can build forecasting into changes for your infrastructure. And if you're still new to the whole IT world, being able to what Splunk calls ingest data is kind of a cool thing. See, when you get to a specific technical level, you have to worry about everything. And I mean everything. Hardware and software, end user clients with the servers that govern them. Then you have things at the application level, ports for access, digital certificates, service availability, database permissions. It's it's a massive thing. And with a tool like Splunk, seeing enterprise levels worth of scenarios that you have to have specifically detailed parameters for everything to work properly, it really comes in handy to be able to build and see detailed reports on all of it. Or even building out a dashboard for the quick glance overview of your infrastructure. Alright, so number 2. The way the SPL works is pretty simple. I'm not trying to play it cool, but being on the administrative side, I found it easy to wrap my head around how the SPL works. And working with it for a while, I can tell you, and this is to be honest, it's pretty simple. If you've even dipped toes into PowerShell and so happen to have used the pipe system they use, you'll feel right at home. And before I knew it, I had tons of searches, and this was all made easy because they have such a dope knowledge base. Like, seriously. Literally, 2 thumbs up, big clap. Big clap, guys. It has kind of like a MDN touch to it, if you've ever used that, where they just point out great ways to use the robust features of their actual system. Alright, awesome. Number 3, forwarders, indexers, and search heads. Now, the reason I bring this up is because these are 3 major components of Splunk, which are active on the servers and help you pull in and evaluate the data. So it breaks down like this. Let's start with the forwarders. These forwarders are what sit on the server or whatever device you have it on and pushes the data inward to your indexers. These forwarders typically come in 2 flavors, a universal forwarder and a heavy forwarder. So the inside scoop on the universal forwarder is that it pulls data that is not really processed, so it tends to be a little bit bigger of a strain on like network resources, and that's because of the amount of data that needs to go through this goose. The flip side of the coin are the heavy forwarders. Before you start thinking that these are the thick boy systems that are, just pushing all this data, they are actually the bouncers at your favorite club, making sure not to let unnecessary data hit up the hottie of this whole thing, the indexer, and just crowd control. Now, before you get all crazy about your new muscular friend, there are edge cases like, for example, cost, current infrastructure, design constraints, where physically or even logically you have specific equipment. These are just a few examples of why you would select one over the other. We now arrive to the hostess with the mostest, the indexer. The Splunk indexer is your mothership. It houses all of your data, and depending on what forwarder you pick, will determine if it will just do indexing or indexing and parsing of the data. And it could be a whole lot of data. In an enterprise level, like huge and major companies, these indexers can pull data that can reach terabytes per second. and not even flinch. And from personally building a lab on my MacBook, I also built a CentOS server with my AWS account. You can make an indexer out of super small systems, all the way up to, and I mean this literally, huge data centers where each one of these servers can just be so beefy. Hundreds upon hundreds of gigabytes of RAM with racks and racks of CPUs. Do you understand me? All out OG baller status, cheddar. Just to be able to handle the demand needed to actually compute these ridiculously large sums of data. The reason the indexer gets the moniker of hostess with the mostest is because not only is it nice enough to keep your data all cozy and warm, but it also cleans house, and if configured properly, can really make the difference in performance because it is scrubbing out data you don't really need. And finally, we have the search heads, the third major component of Splunk. The search head is the part of Splunk that typical users will be interacting with. These are the GUIs that allow you to perform searches of the data that you are collecting. When talking about design, here is another moment that you will have to evaluate as to how you will have this operate in the field. Again, based on how much data you're moving, the demand of that data, and even the retention policies will all play a role as to how you address key situations like this. One of the massive factors to consider is that the search heads have the ability to work by itself single-handedly or in combination with the indexers. What I mean by this is that the search head can remain in a state where it only submits search requests to the indexer, or it can play the role of load balancer, as it can also do indexing while helping with search requests from other search heads. Keep in the back of your mind, these three components come together and have interchangeable parts that depend on the requirements of your infrastructure. On to number 4, the ability to use apps. Go ahead, try. Throw anything you can at Splunk and it will give it the business. I'm talking CSV files, JSON files, Windows system logs, Mac Linux logs, application logs, you name it, Splunk will most likely ingest that, no pain. And the cool part of it is, if it doesn't natively do it, they've most likely got an app for it. One massive contributing factor to Splunk is found in their version of the App Store. Just a quick search through the Splunk base will show you just how many companies currently are supported by an app, or even better, supported natively by the application. The reason that I hold this point so critical is because using Splunk has been pretty fun so far, and even though testing regular expressions or pre-built delimiters by file types is cool and all, it is even better when you have something that already understands the file type you are passing it, so it can just go ahead and parse the data out without even asking to. This puts a massive emphasis on its ability to get up and start running because it can accommodate so many pre-built files. Just about every major vendor that I have worked with, I'm talking hardware like servers, switches, routers, or even cloud management like Azure or AWS, and even other stuff like network devices. Again, just name it, it'll probably take that file. I've even tried looking for an app with more obscure file types in the Splunk base, and it did not fail. And to close out the session, number 5, too much data can be an issue. The final point that I would like to make, and I'm not trying to Uncle Ben you right now.
They ask you how you are, and you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine.
But from my experience, there is a fine line between we're collecting all the data that we need and holy crap, this is a lot of data and now it's becoming misleading. One thing to take into consideration is the impact on storage. Without having a clear view of what data produces value to you and just simply collecting all the data you can, and you can find yourself asking questions like these. Where will we store it all? Will this impact our budgets? Or even, would this produce enough network latency that it would impact production? I later looked online and there's a term for this where you collect all the data just because you can. It's called data gluttony. The second thing that popped into my mind was also how staggering and confusing some of the data can get. Now, I have worked with manufacturers that provided excellent documentation, A+ support levels, where the documentation was exactly step by step the answer to whatever question or problem you may have. And I have also worked with not so great documentation, where out of desperate need, I had to make my own knowledge base and go from there. I made this a key item because I have also been in the position where I based reports or dashboards inside Splunk predicated on what information I was originally given, and come to find out that the event ID or performance counter that I was relying on was not intended to be used that way, or the very short documentation was not explicit enough with its explanation, leaving the question, maybe that is what this is for? The more complex the environment, the more you will have to resolve the what ifs in order to prevent the what just happened. Situations like this could lead to spamming of alerts, or, for example, if you build something like a data model, it could radically change the trajectories of the values you're collecting, thus creating inaccurate models to base your decisions on. All of these scenarios are to make you think of your infrastructure as a whole and potential impacts from introducing new variables to it. These are just a few things that could happen, so try to take some of them into consideration when bulletproofing your system. Alright, well, that is the end of the first episode. I hope you guys liked it, and I'm trying to make this the first of many. I really enjoy learning about technology, and I'm looking forward to sharing this knowledge and my experiences with you all. So smash that like button and subscribe, because we have a lot more in store for you, and you won't want to miss it. I'll see you guys on the next one.